Custom. There's an anthropology book with an interesting title, Custom is King. And I think what this refers to is something which is very central to my discipline of anthropology, which is that in most human societies until recently and in the West, the way in which your life was regulated was through custom. Custom dictated who you should marry, what you should wear, what you should eat, who you should worship, almost everything. And so there was an unspoken agreement at a deep level about the ways in which people should behave and think. Now, more recently, anthropologists have sometimes changed, this sounds a rather old-fashioned word, and they have changed it to others, including the word suggested by Pierre Bourdieu, habitus. A traditional, well, not necessarily traditional, but a deep-seated way of doing things, unexamined, a set of rules at such a deep level that you're not even aware of them, and you just go along with them. So they are like the rules of a grammatical system. People speak the language, but they don't know how the rules work and why they're doing it like that. And habitus is at an even deeper level. It's really internalized. And so customs in many societies are like that. They're like that because many of these societies are oral and face-to-face societies, and there's nothing written down, and the relationships are based largely on your relative positions in the kinship system and in the community. And then you regulate them through this thing called customs. One interesting feature of the British system, which I've examined, is the importance of custom, even in a highly individualistic and modern society, as Britain has been for quite a long time. You can see this in the title of the great law book compiled by Sir Henry de Bracton on the laws and customs of the English. And this 13th century law book makes a big separation between laws, which are official guidance made by the government through enactments of Parliament and so on, and the very variable local customs which work at a slightly lower level. So you can have a law in some legal document which says that when you die, the main part of your property, if it hasn't been disposed of by will or otherwise, should go to one heir. But as to which heir it should go to, whether it should go to the oldest born, youngest, male, female, that's a matter of custom. And indeed in England, the manors of England all had different customs, and some of them did have what's known as ultimogeniture, the last born inheriting. And having that distinction makes for a lot of flexibility. So in my case in the University of Cambridge, the general prescriptions for people in the university are set down in university statutes and so on, but they are very general and there are only a number of them. And for example, they stipulate that a university lecturer, in my day anyway, had to give 40 lectures in a year. That is the general rule, and that you must retire at 67, and a few other things like that. The customs within that, the customs within different colleges are very different, their traditions and ways of doing things, and the customs in different departments are interpreted in different ways. You can interpret the law within your customary traditions. As to how customs are developed and maintained, usually there's an idea that older things that have been working should be continued. The good old customs of England, as it were, which have worked for our ancestors, and likewise in university life in my college in King's. It's changed dramatically through the time I've been there, and yet many of the customs remain roughly the same as they were 50 years ago when I went. And that's because they seem to work, and people are agreed that there's no point in fixing something if it isn't broken. So maintain the customs. And that reverence for the past, for the precedents, for what was done in our ancestors' time, is another feature of England combined with its rapid shifts. In a number of societies, such older ways are disapproved of. Extreme example is the attempt of Chairman Mao during the period of the Communist Party domination to sweep away the olds, Confucianism and the family and so on, because they were supposed, he thought, to deaden and destroy the hope and promise of Chinese society. So start again, wipe away the customs. And indeed, revolutionary movements, usually one of their first targets are older customs, which they think are at the root of whatever it is they're trying to eliminate. Being a middle-of-the-roader, I can see that some customs become stale and out of kilter with the society. It's famously put by Tennyson in his line, which Arthur says as he is dying, surveying his round table of knights: the old order changeth, giving place to new, and God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good custom should pollute the world. I'm not sure that's exactly right, and not pollute, but the idea is that good customs can turn into bad customs, which is obviously true. And yet we have to be very careful when we brush aside a traditional way of doing things. This is particularly true, and the last point, as you grow older, each of us builds up a set of customs. We customarily get up at this time, we customarily cook this, we do these things in these ways, we arrange our lives in space and time and our objects in customary ways, which means that we no longer have to really think about them or argue about them. And I find now, in my early 80s, that if I disturb these, it can be quite undermining or lead to a lot of trouble. Even if I start rearranging my books on the shelves, if I move a set of books, I can no longer often find them, because I have got a sort of mental map, a customary map of where all my books are, and if I move them. And that's the same for many older people, and which is one of the reasons why, if you extract people from their customary world, in other words, the house they've lived in for a number of years, and move them into an old people's home or a smaller house, it's a real dislocation. Their whole customary life is undermined. So customs are a shorthand and efficient way of dealing with 90% of our lives. We just do them automatically. And so for me also, to a certain extent, custom is king or queen.